And within the university system, no, I must place the union in proper pathway for people to understand.
Hello and welcome to the program. I am DEJI360. Thank you very much for joining us. We're still talking about the 100 days of President Muhammadu Buhari in office. He was actually sworn in on the 29th of April. He's been in office now for over 3 months, slightly over 3 months. And up till this moment, President Buhari has not appointed a cabinet. We still do not have ministers in place. Some people are taking issues with that, saying, look, the president by now ought to have appointed a cabinet. Of course, the president has said he's taking his time. And of course, we understand. He's also said before the end of September, we're going to have the ministers. As a matter of fact, we understand the Department of State Services, otherwise known as SSS, that's Nigeria's Secret Police, is actually vetting the list of ministerial nominees. So probably before the end of next week or early the week after, we should know who the ministers of this government would be. But then some people are saying, look, Buhari ought to have appointed ministers before now. But it's not just about ministers that we'll be talking about. We'll also be assessing the president in terms of his fight against corruption and, of course, the Boko Haram insurgency. Joining me right now on the program is the president of the African Bar Association, Mr. Hannibal Uwaifo. Mr. Uwaifo, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Let me just start by asking you if you are disappointed that up till this moment, President Buhari has not appointed his ministers.
Thank you very much for inviting me to the program. On the contrary, I'm very pleased with the way the president is taking his time to do things. That's the way to get better. We had ministers for the past 16 years or so. The last government had ministers for over 6 years, and nothing was working in Nigeria. I do not see the point that President Buhari would have made if he rushed into appointing ministers 2 days or 3 days or 1 week or perhaps 30 days after he was sworn in. What I expect the president to do and what the president has done is very simple. As the president was sworn in, the African Bar Association wrote to the president to congratulate him, and we said to the president in our letter that we expect that a code of conduct must be put in place before ministers can be appointed. Code of conduct that will guide their operations and will guide their behavior ethically and operationally. And I think that that's what the president said at home to Nigerians, that there must be rules and regulations that must be put in place for his ministers to operate. And he also said when he paid a visit to the United States, and I think that that's what the president is doing. I think the president is right. I support the president, and I think that it gives the president enough time to hear what people want to say. It gives the president enough time to look back at what has happened and not to appoint people in the euphoria of the moment of being sworn in or having won elections. Now Nigerians are talking. People are saying quite a lot of things. Obligations are flying against one another, and the president is watching, and he'll be able to decide who and who he can work with. Therefore, I support the president's delay in appointing ministers. In any case, 3 months is not too much for the president to take time to appoint his ministers. Ministers who were appointed in a hurry were ministers that were submitted by politicians who campaigned alongside the last regime. They submitted names of politicians. The president did not know the ministers. The president did not know their characters. The former president did not know who they were. And they messed up the president, and they messed up Nigeria.
But what would you say? What would you say to those who say, look, this president had all the time in the world to prepare for his presidency? As a matter of fact, he started running right from 2003. So, and this is 2015, that he knew all that while that he was running for the presidency. He had all the time in the world. So why delay?
Well, for me, I'm not the president, but I can attempt to imagine what the president will be thinking. Every contest or every presidential contest is a different ballgame altogether. There are different players. The first time the president contested was under a different political party, and they are different players. His vice presidential candidate was different. This time around, the president also had different political players, more parties joining to form the All Progressives Congress, a new vice president, a new set of people. And so it's difficult for want to say he had all the time in the world. I don't think the president had all the time in the world. I think the president spent most of his time campaigning. The president spent most of his time trying to sell himself to Nigerians. And I think it's time for the president to find out who and who amongst Nigerians, not necessarily those who campaign with him, not necessarily those who are politicians. The president has time now to look at, after winning elections and after being sworn in, the president has time to sit down carefully to evaluate the entire situation and know those who can best serve the interests of this country, taking in mind and bearing in mind the mistakes of the past that Nigeria is still swimming in.
Now let's talk about the president's anti-corruption fight. It's one of the biggest issues in the country today. A lot of the president actually campaigned on that platform saying he was going to fight corruption, and it appears we're seeing that. As we speak today, for instance, the president of the Nigerian Senate is being investigated for corruption. How would you assess, I mean, even though it's such a short time, I mean, the president has been in office for just 3 months, but so far, how would you assess his anti-corruption fight?
I want to tell you that I'm very pleased with the way things are going, even though we're just starting off, but it's a good way to start off. In Nigeria, we used to know what we call body language, the body language of the president, the body language of different people. But I can tell you, the body language of the president today does not tolerate corruption. And that's why you can see people are running helter-skelter. All those who are involved in shady deals are beginning to find how to get out of it. We talk in the country and in the land today is corruption. The labor unions are demonstrating, or rather they are protesting, and they are going out saying enough of this corruption. I want to tell you the truth of the matter. The problems of Nigeria are three: corruption, corruption, and corruption. If we stop corruption, if you put a little money into the educational sector, you will see things will get better. If we stop corruption, the teeming unemployed youths will be able to enjoy a bit of unemployment no matter how much they are paid. If you stop corruption, pensioners will not be dying. If you stop corruption, our planes will not be dropping from the skies. If you stop corruption, the things that happen to Nigerian National Shipping Line will not happen. If you stop corruption, Nigerian Airways will not be dead. If you stop corruption, public officials will not be swimming in wealth, while those who they claim to be serving are dying in hunger and in penury. If you stop corruption, people will not go to bed hungry. So I think the topic must be corruption, corruption and corruption. We must kill corruption, or corruption will kill us, just like the president have said. I'm very pleased with the way things are going. I'm only very saddened because, as a lawyer, I'm deeply very saddened because of the way the law courts are going. I'm totally disappointed that we still have courts today that are granting injunctions saying that the police cannot investigate a politician. I'm disappointed that courts are granting injunctions to say that anti-corruption bodies cannot investigate. This is one of the problems that we are facing in the judiciary. The judiciary must wake up. I'm not saying that these all judges are involved in this, but some very bad eggs in the judiciary are continually granting this injunction. The African Bar Association is very saddened, and we are very disappointed that these things continue to go. We are going to call on the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and we are going to call on all those concerned with the judicial process in Nigeria to stop these judges from further desecrating the temple of justice. The role of a judge is not to grant injunctions to stop investigating bodies from performing their duties. The role is to ensure that justice is done to those who are being investigated and those who have been abused or those who have been robbed. Now, I want to tell you something. The Nigerian people have been robbed and robbed and robbed by these politicians. Things cannot continue like this. It's very common in Nigeria to see a politician that is arrested hiring the services of very senior members of the bar and plenty of lawyers to defend them. They are defending the politicians. Who is going to defend the common man that has been abused and whose monies and wealth have been stolen? Who is going to defend the Nigerian that does not go to bed with food? Who is going to defend the Nigerian who is dying in hospital without medical care? I think enough of all this trash. The judiciary must wake up to its responsibilities. If a person's right has been abused, is equal in defense as the politician. The politician has a right to be defended. The politician has a right to the legal process. Just like the people of Nigeria, just like the government of this country, also have a right to the legal process. So I'm disappointed in judiciary. I'm disappointed in politicians who call themselves senators, who rush to the courts clapping with bands and swimming around courts. I'm disappointed in politicians at the slightest accusation of corruption allegation against any of their members, or their spouses, or their friends. They leave the Senate, they leave the work for which they have been elected, and they go around under the guise of solidarity. This is a disgrace, and these politicians should be ashamed of themselves. It's time for Nigeria to change, and Nigeria is going to change these people. The demonstrations embarked upon by Nigerians have just begun with the Nigerian Labour Congress. All Nigerians will have to come out sometime to put these politicians in their shoes and say enough of corrupt practices.
I was just going to ask you, because you talked about the judiciary, and before now, a lot of people had said, look, one of the biggest stumbling block President Buhari would encounter in his fight against corruption is the judiciary. And it appears we're beginning to see that. You alluded to that. You alluded to it as you spoke. For instance, just recently, we know that the former special advisor, the man who was in charge of the amnesty program under President Goodluck Jonathan, Kingsley Kuku, was actually invited by the EFCC to be investigated. And of course, he succeeded in getting a high court injunction now, stopping the EFCC from investigating him, stopping the ICPC as well from investigating him altogether. Some people have said, look, that is a clear demonstration of the kind of challenge President Buhari's anti-corruption fight is going to encounter as we go ahead.
Well, I'm deeply disheartened by this development. It's been here. I remember former Governor Odile of Rivers State being granted an injunction never to be investigated. I don't understand where this law is coming from. I don't understand what kind of law or what kind of judicial discretion this is. I'm totally inflamed. I'm totally shocked that these things could continue in Nigeria. I do not see how a court of law, in its right senses, exercising proper judicial discretion, judicially and judiciously, can wake up and say a politician being accused, or anybody at that, being accused of corrupt practices should not be investigated. I do not understand where that discretion is coming from. Judicial officers are expected to exercise their decision with discretion, with proper discretion, and with judicial discretion. But this discretion is being abused. And I think that it's going to be a very big problem for the judiciary very soon. Unless we see those concerned, the National Judicial Commission and the Chief Justice of Nigeria and the heads of various courts call their judges to order. Nigeria has to change. We cannot continue to shield people like this. There is nothing wrong. If a person is accused, is innocent until proven guilty, let him come to court to defend himself. Like what happened today, I'm deeply starting to hear the Code of Conduct Bureau is being restrained, or is rather being prevented from carrying out his statutory duties. If the Code of Conduct Bureau, for instance, is accusing the Senate President of not declaring his assets, that's between the Code of Conduct Bureau and the Senate President. And I believe that the Senate President is not above the law. He should go to the Code of Conduct Bureau to defend himself. He cannot hide from defending himself. He cannot shield himself by going to court, and hiring lawyers to go to various courts to be asking that he should not appear before the Code of Conduct Bureau. The Code of Conduct Bureau, even if you read the Constitution properly, has equal and coordinate jurisdiction even with this same court. Why would these kind of things be happening? If the Senate President is not guilty, it's very easy. You go to court and defend yourself. I think that public officials should appreciate the fact that running under legal cover, under the guise of the rule of law, is not going to help this country, neither is going to help them. On the long run, they are going to be the end losers.
Let me quickly, let's leave the issue of corruption now and turn our attention to something else, the fight against the Boko Haram insurgency. We heard President Buhari the other day come out in France to say that Boko Haram really wants to negotiate with the government of Nigeria, and that, you know, he said basically that his government, of course, would not shy away from negotiating with Boko Haram if the conditions were perfect. And of course, he's saying that Boko Haram was asking that the government releases one of its commanders in government custody now. What do you make of this idea of the government negotiating with Boko Haram? And do you think this president has been able to handle this Boko Haram insurgency well so far?
Well, I believe that at every point in time in the nation's history, a lot of events happen. This issue of Boko Haram was badly managed. I continue to say so on position of the African Bar Association. Believe that the Nigerian government mismanaged the situation, leading to devastating consequences. At the very beginning, we remember that schools were burnt and students were killed. We remember what Boko Haram had been saying, that they do not want education, they are against Western education. But the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria failed to listen and failed to utilize the proper security implications of this. For instance, if some schools had been burnt and students were burnt alive, was it not the responsibility of the government to know that because Boko Haram is against education, they ought to tighten the security around these institutions? But they didn't do that. And that's how our girls that were taken away by Boko Haram for more than 500 days now were taken away by Boko Haram because of the insensitivity and incompetence of those who were running the affairs of our country. So nothing had happened. Boko Haram continued to strike with ease, and now we have a new government. I believe that the new government has decided to look at the whole thing all around and they try to employ every tactics possible and necessary to end this insurgents. Part of what the president has said, for us in the African Bar Association, with due respect, we did not subscribe to negotiating with terrorists because we believe that Boko Haram is a terrorist organization. But in the circumstances in which the Nigerian government find themselves, with all due respect and without holding forth for them, I believe that they now think the circumstances in which they find themselves necessitates that they probably talk to these people, particularly when it is being peddled that these Boko Haram fighters are the ones that are seeking for peace. If they are seeking for peace, I believe that it's time for the Nigerian government to also take the peace from them without necessarily leaving the sting on those who have committed atrocities and those who have murdered our people. So once again, I believe that the government is doing its best. The military is moving on. Don't forget that the immediate past chief of defense staff has said that he was leading a military that had no weapon to fight. I'm happy to hear that the new military authorities are beginning to get weapons to fight. They are making exploits. They are arresting Boko Haram members daily. They are destroying their camps and they are freeing people. And you are getting quite a lot of intelligence report. And I think that if you add that one to the peace overtures being done by Boko Haram, because the heat is on them, I think we should be able to see the end of this insurgency soon. And if that happens, that will be kudos to the present government.
Finally, let me just ask you this. Look at the President Buhari's administration over the past 100 days. Tell me, what exactly, just pick out one thing that you would have wished this administration had done differently. Well,
I particularly think that the government knows better. No one can be in their shoes. But I would have wanted a clear list of those who, at the moment, they have been able to pin down to have mismanaged the resources of this country. Again, like I said, the way we are going about our rule of law, as if those who have been robbed are not entitled to rule of law, the way we are going about playing our politics and the way the politicians are going about it, again, is a different ball game. And it leaves the citizens in awe and in utter confusion. The entire country is totally disappointed in the way these politicians are still conducting themselves, both opposition and those who claim to have even won power. And so I believe that probably what the president would have done differently would have been to probably list out those that had been found wanting, or those that have been established to have been involved in some of these shady deals like oil bunkering, and those two who were busy pocketing revenues from Nigeria. But the way it is, we are still waiting. I think the time will come in due course. But like I said, the judiciary must understand that if it becomes a stumbling block to the eradication of corruption and to the greatness of Nigeria, it will have to face the consequences as time goes on. And I pray it doesn't, because that's our constituency. We have a lot of very good judges, we have a lot of very good lawyers, but the few ones are tarnishing the image of the judiciary. These injunctions must stop and the country must move forward.
Mr. Hannibal Uwaifo, President of the African Bar Association, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Yusuf, thank you very much for joining us. Let me just start by asking you, did it come to you as a big surprise? I'm talking about your group now, as a big surprise that Boko Haram would intensify its attack on innocent civilians, under President Buhari, especially the first 100 days? Because a lot of people had expected that, Buhari was coming to end the Boko Haram insurgency, and they were expecting instant results, so to speak.
Yeah, I think terrorism in the world generally, it's not something that one government can just make promises to end within a short period of time and it's going to end as it is. It requires a lot of interventions on the part of the government, which actually goes beyond the whole idea of military approach in thousand detention. Yeah, it's not actually surprising to us because definitely the terrorists also would want to do something to give an impression that they are alive and they are actually they are actually posing threat to the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of the country. And in the report we released, we cited we outlined a lot of interventions undertaken by the President Buhari in order to address the menace, which we think it actually been a positive outlook. It has had a positive impact on the entire intervention. Yeah, we've had a kind of more concerted effort on the part of the terrorists to invest more in bomb explosions, attacks, suicide bombing, unlike what happened in the previous months, where we have a lot of attacks in different communities which are quite intermittent, which are quite recurrent phenomenon. Well, what we had in recent time was just a phenomenon of suicide bombing and a pocket of attacks across the country. Yeah, it's an issue which my organization actually flagged, because we can say that we are investing a lot of effort to douse attention. On the other hand, we see a lot of innocent Nigerians being killed, and that is why CDD has been at the forefront of clamoring for the fact that government should shift from devising only military approach in dousing attention, but also need to look beyond that, to look at the issue of transnational justice, to see how transitional justice and, if possible, dialogue, to dialogue with the terrorists who are willing and open, we often call them repentant terrorists, who are open to discussion. And we can see that that's actually, military approach has been working in the recent time, where we see a lot of terrorists, we've seen the report in recent days, terrorists coming to declare that they don't want to be engaged in such phenomena. But we still insist on the fact that to actually douse the tension, we need to devise another means in the area of transitional justice mechanism to address the issue of imbalances in terms of, we've seen the reported cases of, rape. Amnesty report actually pointed to the fact that there are a lot of people who suffered a lot of rape, who suffered a lot of torment from even the military who are fighting the war. So these people need the grievances needs to be addressed, and even those who have suffered a lot from the attacks in the past, and even in recent time by Boko Haram, the justice has to be to address their own grievances. And because fundamentally is the whole issue of mobilizing community to be part of the fight against Boko Haram. And in order to achieve that, you also have to do what actually appeal to them, to actually mobilize them in the fight against Boko Haram. So we are looking at the issue of transitional justice mechanism, which is well highlighted in our report as a way of, to complement the military approach adopted by the government.
If you can hear me, let me just interject here. I want to find out from you, from the responses you gathered, did it come across that people are disappointed with the government's handling, for instance, that they are not satisfied with the government's handling of the Boko Haram insurgency?
Yeah, as in, if people are not satisfied with the way government is handling Boko Haram insurgency?
No, I said, did it come across did it come across from your own findings now that Nigerians may not have been satisfied, or they are not satisfied with the way the government is handling the Boko Haram insurgency?
Yeah, the thing is, we actually conducted what we called a performance assessment survey, and looking at the percentage of citizens who are actually, we asked citizens to look at what should be what they think government should prioritize on satisfaction. A lot of Nigerians are actually satisfied with the intervention, taken so far by the Nigerian government. But despite that, people are still, expressing anger with respect to the number, of a lot of people who are dead in the recent time.
Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on DEJI360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world again?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions.